Okay, so my name is John Ferrara. I'm the CEO of Nimble, and I'm honored and excited to have my buddy Brian Fanzo to do a little bit of storytelling, preaching and teaching, as I like to say, with the audience today. Brian, I've known for quite some time, and when I first met him, he was working for another technology company, and we were talking about his plans for his future. And I just love having seen him evolve and blossom like a tree to become really one of the key teachers and preachers in his age. And not just about millennials, but really about life, about human beings, and about how to achieve your passion, plan, and purpose. And so, Brian, why don't you take us away with a little bit about using digital storytelling to grow in 2018.
Sure. No, and thanks, John. Thanks so much for having me. And it is kind of funny. I remember, this is how much someone can make an impact on your world. Is I remember where I was walking around my backyard in Phoenix, Arizona, when we had our very first phone call. I remember walking in and out. My dogs were barking, and we walked and probably talked for an hour and a half. And so, to your point, we kind of talked about before the webinar. It's powerful when you connect via social, and then you take things to phone calls or video chats, and then thankfully enough, we've been able to meet in person many times as well. So I think that's it is the perfect example of how to truly find value and grow on social media. And I'm thankful for people like yourself for not only mentoring me but leading the way and kind of being a pioneer in this space. So I'm honored and it's excited to kind of share my thoughts, and the agenda will kind of walks through some of the high level things that we're going to talk about on the webinar. But rather than running through each one of these points, I'm just going to jump into it. For those that are listening here live, feel free to add your questions. I know John and Michaela will be monitoring that. One of the things, I openly admit that I have ADHD, and it allows me to multitask probably better than most. And so I'll keep an eye on those questions as well, kind of as I go through. And I think John and I will kind of jump back and forth throughout the presentation. But one of the things that is really interesting, and I think when we talk storytelling, it's very important to pay homage to those that kind of do it better than anyone else. And I think J.K. Rowling, of course, with this quote, there's always room for a story that can transport people to another place. And I think in the world we live in today, we're hearing things like virtual reality, augmented reality. We're hearing things about, will artificial intelligence and robotics replace jobs? But one of the things that, and it's the quote that we use to kind of promote this webinar is that, Maya Angelou said that, people don't remember who you are or what you do. They remember how you make them feel. And how we make people feel is through the power of storytelling. And I love this quote from J.K. Rowling because it is about transporting people to another place. It's about allowing them to feel, allowing them to experience. And it's exciting. I think virtual reality and augmented reality are going to transform storytelling. It's going to allow us to take people on journeys truly to another place. But the interesting thing about that is, before we can get to virtual reality and augmented reality, we have to start figuring out how to tell a story in a blog or in the digital space, and then slowly move into audio with podcasting or video. And that's where I'll get into a little bit more on that, because this is one of those weird arenas where if you don't start storytelling today and leveraging that in the digital space, you'll never be ready for virtual reality and augmented reality. We have to crawl, walk, run, and that crawl starts by kind of embracing the kind of this digital journey. And this is a movie that just recently came out, and I think this is a perfect example of a world where they might be in a trailer, you might be somewhere around the world, but your ability to be transported thanks to storytelling is truly a powerful vehicle that we have at our disposal today. And I think this is the way off future, the future now. And just looking at the people that are joining the show that we're watching right, that we're doing this right now, we have people joining from all over the world, from Windsor, Ontario, Montreal, Austin, Texas, Philadelphia. And how amazing is it? And this is kind of my soapbox, is I truly do believe we're living in the greatest time in history. And I think it's because we have the ability to connect with people around the world, no matter where you live, no matter what you're doing. And we really are able to provide them an experience that they can't get anywhere else. And I think this is this data, I'm a data guy as well. So kind of throwing some data in here, kind of complement this, is that I thought this was very important, that 75% of millennials, so those under the age of 36 years old, believe that attending a live event is more impactful than taking action online. Now, you might be reading this quote or this stat and like, wait a second, isn't Brian talking about digital storytelling? Doesn't this quote kind of throw it the other direction? And the reason I put this out there is that I don't look at what we do in the digital landscape as replacing what we do offline or at a live event. I actually look at it as a way to complement it, a way to amplify it. And, a quote that, I end up being linked or famous for in my side is that, my dad always said, well, son, I love what you're doing in social media and digital, but you have to remember that it's never going to replace a handshake. And I firmly agree with my dad, is that what we do in the digital landscape shouldn't replace what we do offline, but it should make those things more impactful. And so when I read this stat, 75% of millennials would rather be a part of a live event than an online event. What that really means to me is that we need to be better at telling our story online, because it's not about replacing one or the other, but if we are truly good at telling our story, sharing who we are and what we are about, that is true. That's the power of what digital kind of allows us to do. And I think this stat for me was truly a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call to say, okay, how can we become better online? And this is that quote that I just said.
Brian,
that, online.
We just lost your screen.
Oh, you lost my screen. Oops.
Yeah, you just hit play again. That happened to me the other day. Yeah.
We're back?
Yep.
All right. That was me clicking around. So online will never replace offline. And I think that's something to remember. But what I like to think of it is that, the relationships that we have, when I reached out and when I saw Michaela and John at Social Media Marketing World just a couple months ago, it was an instant hug. And I was very blessed that, they were sitting front row for my keynote there at Social Media Marketing World. And that's because we're able to foster strong relationships and continue conversations online. But it is about making that offline conversation, that offline relationship truly memorable and impactful. And so for businesses that are out there today, when I start working with a business, what I tell them is that, we don't need to think about it as online versus offline. Rather, we need to think of the two in one synchronous, vision together, which, is really powerful, because it doesn't matter where you live. It doesn't matter your resume. It doesn't matter your background. It doesn't matter your sexual orientation. We have the ability to connect with people around the world. And it's a power that we never had. I remember growing up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and the exposure I had through elementary school and middle school was really just to my friends around the Pittsburgh area. I wasn't able to see what people were doing in different cities. I was able to watch TV, but I wasn't able to connect truly with people around the world. And then slowly, as digital technology over the last 10 or 12 years has grown, my daughters, living in Virginia, we've been able to Skype with my friends and coworkers that are in Australia or in California or in Atlanta. And to me, this is truly, it's impactful at all different aspects of our lives and our business. But to do so, it takes a little bit more than just broadcasting, because TV is about broadcasting. And this is another one of those stats that I think is pretty interesting, that 40% of millennials say that YouTube creators understand them better than their friends. And when I first read this, I was like, wow, I think millennials need to figure out how to have better friends. If YouTube creators understand them better. But if you take a step back and you think about this, when we have our friends that are in our local area, oftentimes, much like our family, we don't choose who do we go to school with. It's just who do we happen to be in class with, or who do we live around, or who shows up at our local pub or at our restaurants. But in the YouTube world or in the digital world, we're able to find people that look like us, that talk like us, that understand us. We're not limited by just the people that are around us. We really have no limitations at all. And I always use this as an example, is that if you like, underwater basket weaving, and you like doing it in your socks, and you like coloring your hair blue, you're able to find people that maybe do the same thing or that relate with that kind of expression and exposure. And this is why I look at it being the greatest time in history, because as a kid growing up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, maybe I wasn't exposed to those that knew me or liked me, and I kind of defaulted just to those that were around me. But thanks to the world we live in now, I can find those people that get me and understand who I am. And this is truly a powerful element of digital storytelling, and it allows us to understand things at an entirely new level. And what I want to set the stage with on this is that to truly understand digital storytelling, we have to understand what the world looks like for today, the people that are out there. And so the first one is that disruption and change are the new normal. Today's environment, those of us in this digital world, we're used to things changing and disruption happening on a daily basis. All of a sudden Facebook changes. I know Gmail, if you're a Gmail user, all of a sudden today they rolled out a brand new user interface. And I was like, well, great. I just got used to using the old Gmail interface, and now I have a new one. And so disruption and change are definitely the new normal. The second point is that I believe that community is the future of business. And I know John believes this a lot. John was one of those ones that I remember when we first connected, not only investing in the community, but really understanding that we have to listen and learn from people. It's why the Nimble tool, in my opinion, is so powerful. It's because it allows you to track and understand all of your communications with your community so that you can enrich those conversations and kind of extend that conversation beyond just those elements. And then the third one is the future of innovation is collaboration. I look at, if we're going to cure cancer, if we're going to innovate in some really innovative ways, it's not going to be about just working with people that work in our company. It's not going to be about working with people that are just in our individual industry, but it's going to be about collaborating with people outside of our walls and doing some amazing things in collaboration. And the interesting thing about collaboration, and I talk a lot about collaboration, as a keynote speaker, is that the key for collaboration to be successful is that collaboration requires it to be a mutually beneficial relationship. And what I mean by that is you have to, if you're going to collaborate with other people, everyone has to see value. And for you to see that value, for you to connect with people that understand who you are, you first have to tell your digital story. And so the reason I'm setting this stage now is because telling your story has so much value, but you have to start understanding where it hits in there. So telling your story so that you can relate with people on change, so that you can build community, so you can find those people to collaborate. And then last but not least, which might be the most important line of this presentation from a standpoint of storytelling, is that I believe the future of marketing is your relatability. And what I mean by that is we've always heard always that people buy from people they like. And that is still the case, right? If you like somebody and they're selling you something, you have a much more likelihood of actually purchasing a product from them. But in this world we live in today, which I explained how different it is than the world of our past, is that we trust people that look like us, that smell like us, that talk like us. Well, maybe not smell like us. Smell might be an odd one. But we trust people that get us. And I always use this example is that, if Matthew McConaughey is on TV and he's talking about buying a Lincoln, and he says, he's a Lincoln driver. And first off, I'm not even sure if I believe he actually drives a Lincoln. Yes, he might have one in his driveway because it's part of his agreement as a brand ambassador. But if I was going to buy a new car, I don't trust Matthew McConaughey to tell me which car I should buy because he doesn't have kids like I do. He doesn't commute to and from the airport. He probably even has a driver. But if I was going to buy a car, I'm going to trust the resources from a YouTube creator or someone that test drives a lot of cars, that is a friend of a friend, or someone that is connected with me on Facebook. It's why when we travel today, when we're traveling, we don't go to someone's website and say, what's the best place to visit when we're traveling? We post to Facebook and say, hey, friends, what's the best place for, hey, I'm visiting Santa Monica. Where's the best place to eat? Or what's the favorite brewery in that area? And the reason is because we trust people that we can relate to that are part of our community. And this is where storytelling truly comes in, because if we want to be a great storyteller, we have to kind of push new boundaries, and we have to start putting ourselves out there. And this slide, if you guys follow me on social media or have seen me present on, this slide is in every one of my presentations. It's in every one of my pitch decks for my clients. And it's because I truly believe that if you want to tell your story, if you want to leverage digital technology, if you want to stand out in the world today, you have to do something that you have to embrace these two things. And the first one is perfection is a fairy tale. And I'm going to ask everybody, because I ask audiences this as well, if you believe that you are perfect, or that you know of a brand that is perfect, or maybe a leader that is perfect, feel free to put it in the comments or the chat section here on this webinar. But I'm going to guess that maybe there's some people that are humorous. They'll say their boss because their boss is on there. But we don't believe that anybody is perfect. We don't believe that any brand is perfect. And since we don't believe that, why do we always try to create perfect content or try to share our story with the perfect conversation or making everything perfect? And this to me is a huge step. If you can embrace and remember that perfection is a fairy tale, that's going to get you over the hump. Because if you're trying to create something that's perfect, in my opinion, you'll never press the button. You'll never go live, because perfection is a fairy tale, and therefore you'll never achieve that perfection. And then the second part, which is I think the second most important piece when it comes to digital storytelling, is control is an illusion. You can't control what happens around you. You can't control what your message, I can't control what people do with this webinar afterwards. I can't control if someone takes a screenshot of this slide, puts their own name on it, and puts it on their own website. I can't control those things. And so when you get over the fact that you can't control them, you worry a lot less about control, and you worry more about, okay, what are the things that I can share? How can I start telling my story and put things out there? Because like I said on the last slide, people buy from people they like. They buy from people they can relate to. And it doesn't matter to me if someone steals my content. It doesn't matter as much to me if someone says the exact same thing that I do on stage, because I know that people want to relate with who I am. They want to, once people figure out what my story is, what my why is, that's where the magic happens. And think about it from the last purchases you've made. Those purchases that you've made, more than likely, it's because you asked a friend for a recommendation. Someone on Instagram that you trust said, hey, this is my favorite tool. This is my favorite tripod to use. And these are all things that, these are people that are pushing these boundaries. And so to tell your story, if you're a brand, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a small business owner, maybe you're a senior level manager in an executive company, I truly do believe that every person has a story to tell. We all have a why. We all have something that we are doing in our lives that can help other people. But the only way we're going to truly get over this and start telling our story more transparently and start building this trust is if you first believe that perfection is a fairy tale, and that second, control is an illusion.
Hey, Brian, I want to interject something about perfection.
Sure.
So we used to do a lot of A/B testing with direct mail, and that was how we basically did a lot of marketing back in the gold mine days. And what I found is that if you send a letter that's on laser printed Times Roman, pretty perfect on letterhead, it's not going to pull as well as a letter that is courier font with yellow highlighting, that's trifold, and it just feels like it came from somebody simpler. And I think that we believe people that are raw and real more than we believe perfect people. And I think in the future, as more things get built and generated by computers, we'll look for imperfection as a sign of humanity.
I couldn't agree more. And one of the things for me, I talked about this actually at the beginning of the webinar. I have ADHD. I'm diagnosed ADHD. I take Adderall, and I was amazed as I started sharing that, my struggle with ADHD and kind of my way of, kind of dealing with that. And I look at it as a superpower for myself. I was amazed how many people started hiring me. And I said, well, how did you find out about me? Like, well, I knew about you, but all of a sudden, once you started sharing your vulnerability about ADHD, I remember my sister that had ADHD. And then I started to realize, wow, this person isn't full of crap. Like this person is sharing those vulnerabilities. And you're right, John, that to me, and this goes across with everything, right? It's the reason live video is taken off even more so than produced video. It's because you can't fake live video. You can't, all of these things where we didn't trust a lot of, and in this world today, and I think, every business that's out there right now, and I know John agrees with me on this, is that every business, no matter what industry you're in the business of trust. And to gain trust and to build trust, you have to remove perfection from the equation, because nobody believes that you're perfect. And if you start trying to act like you're perfect, you'll never be trusted by your community, by your employees. And I think this is a shift, and it's not the norm, right? I remember my dad, early on, probably 6 or 7 years ago, and he was like, son, why are you wearing a hat? And why don't you have like a shirt with a collar on it with your video that you're doing? And I was like, well, Dad, I'm being transparent. People want to know who I am. And at that time, it was very scary. It was very different. But I look at it in 2018 and beyond, and I believe that if you're trying to be perfect, what you're truly doing is you're alienating your audience, and you're moving further away from trust than moving closer to trust by sharing your vulnerabilities, being okay with your imperfections.
Exactly. And I want to emphasize one thing here with you, Brian, is I really believe that in your storytelling, you have to open up your shirt, roll up your sleeves, show your heart and soul, show who you really are beyond your business persona. Because I believe people connect on the 5 F's of life: family, friend, food, fun, and fellowship. In other words, it's the areas of commonality that you share about yourself that connects with other people. It's not the business shit that you connect with people about. It's the fact that you both love to barbecue, or you both have kids, or whatever. And when you share your imperfections or the struggles you've been through in your life, like I talk about the fact that I went through a head tumor when I was 40, and my journey through that helped me to come to realization of what I'm on this planet to do, which is to help grow others, which helps me grow. And ultimately, people connect with that kind of shit as opposed to, oh yeah, I build CRM systems.
Exactly. And it's funny when you were saying that, because my dad, I remember I learned golf because my dad told me business was done on the golf course. And then I was getting good at golf, and I started getting in the business world. And I said, well, Dad, how do I pitch on the golf course? Like, how do I talk about what I do? And he's like, you don't. And I was like, well, wait a second. Like, didn't you just tell me that business was done on the golf course? And he's like, yes, it's because you share everything else about who you are, all of your other aspects of life, your childhood, about your kids. And all of a sudden that is what sells. And I was like, wow, that's a lot easier for me. And I can tell you, even to this date, I do a lot, majority of my business myself is inbound for people that say, Brian, I've been following you, or Brian, I'm part of your community, or Brian, I saw you on stage and I want to hire you. And it's because I don't pitch, right? I don't have to put myself out there, and I allow that storytelling to be my vehicle for selling, rather than me selling, hey, you need to hire me to do this, and that. And I think that is the true power of digital storytelling moving forward.
Amen.
All right, so when we're looking at this, one of the questions I always get, and I'm guessing you, the audience, and I saw John Ward here in the comments. John said that he believes perfection is the enemy of good. So John, I agree 100% with you, and thanks for watching the webinar live here and adding your comments. But one of the questions I get all the time is, okay, all right, Brian, I'm sold. I bought in that digital storytelling is important. I understand that video is coming, and I need to embrace video. But what do I talk about, or where do I share? And this slide alone should answer that question, because I use this word access every single time. So when someone says, well, Brian, I have a blog, I have a website, I do email newsletter, I'm doing cold calls, I have all these things. And what I tell them is to tell your story. People don't care about what you do. And actually what you do is pretty boring. And it doesn't really matter what your industry is. The majority of industries are pretty boring when it comes to what you do. But people care about why you do what you do, how it impacts them. And there's no better way to tell your why. There's no better way to give people a window into who you are and what your business is than providing them access in there. So I always tell people, give access to people in your business. Why not interview your employees and your customers? Why not give them access? Do a video tour of your office. Why not take them behind the scenes? If you're a brick and mortar store and you're a clothing business, why not turn on the video and let them know what it's like to open the doors in the morning? One of the things I think about all the time is when someone says, well, Brian, how do I compete with Amazon to get people to come drive out to my store, in the local mall? And the answer is simply, you give me access into who you are. You allow me to feel a part of your business. Amazon is great. Amazon gives me my products in a very timely manner, but I don't have a relationship with Amazon. I don't feel like they give me access to anything that compels me emotionally. And so if you're able to give people access to, the story of your business, to behind the scenes of what you're doing, that's truly what makes people kind of get out of their butt, get out of their seat and go get in the car and drive to a business. Or even doing product releases. One of my favorite things to do with storytelling is, if you're going to launch a brand new product or a brand new feature, why not do a video behind the scenes of that launch? Maybe the last hour before you push the new product feature. If you guys haven't logged into Nimble in a while, I absolutely love the new dashboard for Nimble, of the Nimble interface. I think the UI is beautiful, and it's so much different than where it was before, and I really am a big fan. And I would love to see video of that launch and what John looked like before they pushed the feature live to the product for all the users to actually get, right? Giving people that raw access, and that word experiences. I hear experiential marketing all the time, but I usually ask businesses, do you know what experiential marketing is? And more often than not, they're like, well, kind of, sort of, not really. And this is where that sticker at the top of the screen, think like a fan. And what I mean by that is, it doesn't matter if you're a plumber, it doesn't matter what your business is. Think of it from your fans' perspective and say, what can I give my fans that they can't get anywhere else? And if you can do that through telling a story, maybe it's using Instagram, maybe it's using Facebook, maybe it's doing a Twitter video and giving people access to something that you have going on. I truly do believe that every business, every company, every industry can do some unique things and give access to stuff they've never given before. And this is where I think the ball can really change. And then the part of that that's probably
Brian,
the most.
I want to interject something here,
Yes, sir.
Because I have a story. And
all right.
Sometimes I feel like I'm in one of those meetings where you're up on the soapbox and you're inspiring and educating, and I raise my hand, I'm saying, hallelujah, I want to share, right? And here's my story. When I first saw the Today page, I was stunned. I was overwhelmed. Not just how beautiful it was, but how functional it was. And it was a result of me letting go of the reins and empowering the team to reimagine how you would start your day in Nimble, how you'd end your day in Nimble, how it would deliver more to you. And it really was driven by a guy named Sergey Svets. And Sergey was a new hire at Nimble when we first started, fresh out of college as an entry-level programmer, and he's graduated to become the head of product at Nimble. And with his design team, with his development team, he's reimagining what Nimble is. And it's by empowering your team, like people like Michaela, to grow and then become the persona of the company that humanizes the company and brings more people to it and helps your story grow.
Which is that, and that is truly the exciting part, right? I think, and that's a perfect segue into this be yourself element, because for me, when people ask, Brian, I'm on every channel and I'm creating a lot of content and I'm sharing things out there on a regular basis. And they ask me, Brian, don't you get overwhelmed, or, how do you do all of those things? And for me, the simple answer is, I stopped focusing on trying to be something I was not, and I started being myself and allowing myself to share. And one of the greatest, I'd say, byproducts of being yourself is that you become self-aware. And I've been writing a little bit about this recently for my first book. And self-awareness to me has been something, it's been an interesting journey for me over especially the last 3 to 4 years. And self-awareness, when you embrace it, like you were doing, John, like you said, it allows you to understand what you're good at. It allows you to understand what you're not so good at, what you like doing, what you don't like doing. But it also allows you to open up the doors and windows to working with other people who might be good at what you are not, or might be able to share something that you aren't as familiar with. And it's not until you're self-aware enough or confident enough in who you are as yourself that you can get to that path. And so, I created an online course that I named Be Yourself. And I credit that to being such a fundamental element for me, because I'm able to work with great people. I'm able to align myself with great companies and brands and work with all of these different people, mainly because I'm able to be self-aware enough to know what I do know and also know what I don't know, and then surround myself with those people. And I think being yourself is, in this world we're at right now, it's easy to copy someone else's email newsletter. It's easy to, get a website that looks just like someone else. But if people buy from people that they like and people they relate to, then you need to start doing the one thing that will allow you to stand out from the noise. And the only way to truly be unique is to be the one thing that no one else can be. And that is yourself. And so for me, that's one of these guidelines, and it's a principle for, kind of telling your story. And that is because what I said earlier is that, what you do is boring. What you do is not what people care about. We care about why you do what you do. We care about how you do what you do. We care, hey, how can I get involved? Oftentimes when you look at different things that marketers are putting out today, oftentimes they forget to even say how they just give a call to action. But, how do I get someone involved? How does it impact your life? If you want to create a great video, create a video that impacts someone's life. And it doesn't have to be about your product. Maybe, a good example is maybe your product is a task management product, or maybe for your business, here's a good one. You're a salon owner, and you believe you give great haircuts and you dye people's hair. But one of the things that you've noticed is that people that spend time getting their hair done in your salon are also people that care about weight loss and care about the latest trends in lifestyle. Why not create a piece of content that helps educate those people and helps them solve a problem? Maybe it's the 10 things that dieting has helped, because this is that weird element that if you're only talking about, hey, I own a salon, or hey, I give the greatest haircuts. Well, guess what? Every salon claims to give the best haircut. But if a salon is creating content and telling their story and helping the consumer out, when someone's going to decide which salon they go to, they're going to go, oh yeah, that's the salon that gave me that great advice on a new weight loss product, or the new local gym to go to. I'm going to go to that salon because they care about me, because I know that they get who I am. And so that to me is extremely important.
Hey, Brian, I want to interject something
here
that's aligned with this, and actually connects to somebody that you mentioned before, John Ward, who said, my belief, perfection is the enemy of good. So I nimbled John, and he happens to be a physician with that focuses on transforming your health, not through pills, but really by transforming what you eat and what you do and how you live. And it reminded me of a guy named Dr. Weil. So this guy named Dr. Weil was an MD. He wrote a book called The 28 Days to Optimal Health. He gave his knowledge away. He didn't talk about how great a doctor he was. He talked about how great you could become by changing what you eat and how you live. And that then transformed him, where he now has a clinic where he teaches other doctors, and he's a co-founder of True Foods, which is one of the most amazing restaurants in the country. And he built that brand by giving his knowledge away, not by talking about how great he is, by teaching others how they can be great.
Oh, I love that. And that's that, that's such an amazing element. There's a dentist that I worked with for a while, and he has a podcast, and he just interviews people about things that they've done in their lives to make them more confident. And it's hilarious because the dentist, he never mentions his dentistry. He doesn't talk about teeth, because I'm not sure how many podcast episodes people would listen to if he was only talking about teeth, especially because I'm one that I'm not a fan of the dentist. But I was amazed. His podcast has drastically impacted his business, because he's figured out that he's giving people confidence, he's helping people in their day-to-day life, and then it links back there. So I love that, John. It's an interesting story and a way to kind of connect dots for people as they move forward. And then one of the things I want to kind of add on to this is that now that so we started off with the power of storytelling. We laid the foundation for what the norm is for today. We talked a little bit about, giving people access. But one of the things that I think, and this is one of the things that's the biggest change in our world today, is that nobody is, the old Field of Dreams quote is simply, if you build it, they will come. And here's the breaking news. If you build it, nobody is coming. If you launch a new website, if you have a Facebook page, just because you have that does not mean people are going to come. the new way of life, and it's really just the world we live in today, is that people will engage with you if you come to them. So maybe it's, it used to be, okay, I'm gonna launch a website and everyone's gonna come visit my website. And today it's, I'm gonna have a website, but to get people to my website, I need to go have conversations where they are at. So maybe it's, going into a Facebook group and creating conversation in a Facebook group. Maybe it's going live on Facebook Live video. Maybe it's creating a podcast and syndicating that podcast on your Amazon Alexa. Maybe it's becoming a thought leader on Reddit and answering questions on Reddit. Maybe it's, sharing information on LinkedIn where people are like, wow, you've been really helpful on LinkedIn. Where can I get more information? And then you give them your website link, or maybe Snapchat or Instagram or Twitter. And so when I look at this, and this is something that I really do believe in, I have a concept that I call upcycling. And what upcycling is rather than worrying about creating a really good story every single day, I try to create a great story and then syndicate that and customize it to each different platform. So earlier today, I went live on Facebook Live and Periscope, and I recorded a podcast. And so there was a live video of that podcast. And then what I do is I download that audio and I upload it to all of the podcasting players so that people can consume it on their podcasting apps. I then take my favorite 1-minute clip of that video podcast, and I post it on Instagram and allow people that are on Instagram to see the podcast that I did. I then take my favorite maybe 5-minute clip and I post it on LinkedIn, and I let people see that content on LinkedIn. I then at the end of the month take kind of like the sound bites from that podcast and I create another piece of content. I then take the transcribe of that podcast and I create a blog post on it. And now all of these things might sound overwhelming for people that are listening, but if you think about it, what I do is I just focus for 35 minutes on creating one great piece of content, telling one great story, and then I just customize it and tweak it for all of these different pieces. I think one of the mistakes a lot of people make is they get overwhelmed by trying to tell a story on every one of these platforms individually, uniquely, and it's not about creating good content. To me, it's about creating great content and then bringing that great content to where your audience is. And so that's why I look at this and I say, the field of dreams marketing is over. What you need to do is you need to document your experiences, convey your message, and then upcycle that content and turn it into different types of content and bring it to where your audience really is. And so the kind of summarize that piece of it is I do bring this back to relatability. People, in the world we're living in today, and I'm sure everyone that's listening here, we started off this webinar by saying, what's your favorite platform? And some people like Facebook, some people like Instagram. And so if you're telling amazing stories on Twitter and yet you're not on Instagram, you're probably missing out on an audience that's there, that people that might relate with you. And so when you're starting to think about these different things, and this is something I kind of want to bring full circle with people, is that we want to use our story to shrink the distance between us and our consumers online. Nobody trusts a brand, nobody trusts a logo, nobody trusts an association. We trust people. And every great business knows this for sure. And John already highlighted that earlier by talking about how he was leveraging his employees and Michaela and a lot of the people that are on the team, that it's about the people that make up a brand. A brand is only as great as the employees that are working for that company. And so I truly put this onus on us in this world we're living in today, is how do I tell my story? How do I shrink the distance online and allow people to build trust with who I am? And it comes down to sharing why you do what you do. It comes down to being relatable and ultimately allowing your story to be impactful, because as we started off with, people do believe and understand and remember your experience. And then last but not least, I don't want you to get overwhelmed by all of these things that I'm talking about on this webinar. So one of the places I always say is you need to start small, and you don't need to be on every platform. And you don't really need to be on every platform ever. But what you need to start doing is you need to start focusing on creating meaningful interactions where your community is today. And you might be thinking, I don't know where my community is yet. Well, why not log into Nimble? Why not, pull your email newsletter and ask them, what's your favorite platform? If you're a brick and mortar store, when someone checks out at your register at your store, why not have a little form there at the register and ask people, what's your favorite social network for following brands today? And start to kind of understand where they're at today. And then last but not least is try to listen for where people are going tomorrow. Virtual reality and augmented reality, it's coming and it will be here. But I feel like sometimes we get overwhelmed, and rather than focusing where our business is today, we start getting okay, well, I want to create stories that are great on virtual reality, or I want to figure out this augmented reality thing. And what I don't like on that side is we then start alienating the customers that we already have. And so I believe that you need to start telling your story where your audience is today, and just keep listening and understanding where your audience is going tomorrow, so that you'll be ready to kind of dive into where the future holds, especially as we move forward in storytelling. So that's all I have for as far as the direct webinar part 4. I think, John, you and I are going to take some questions and bounce back and forth. And for those that are here on the webinar right now, I do have an online course that I created called Be Yourself. And what I decided to do is that for everyone that's on the webinar, either watching it live or watching the replay, if you use the code Nimble, so if you just go to beyourself.thinkific.com, or you can even just use the short URL, beyourself.live. If you go there and you just type in the code Nimble, you'll get $100 off the course. You get unlimited access to the course. And the thing about the course is I did about 4 hours worth of video content, but no video is longer than 10 minutes long. The average video is 3 minutes long. And it's mainly because I know that we all are overwhelmed with everything that's going on in our lives. So check out that course. Feel free to check it out. The course, for me, I didn't create it as something that I needed to create as a product. I just had a lot of people that asked me, Brian, what's your secret to telling stories online? What's your secret to growing your personal brand? And it is being yourself. And that course is my playbook of everything that I do online. So, John, I appreciate you allowing me to come on here and have access to your community. And I love to answer questions, or maybe see what other people have to say about what I shared so far.
So, Brian, first off, always amazing. Thank you so much. Why don't you pass me the screen? And I want to show people a little bit about storytelling and how I've used social to tell my story. Because I think that a lot of people dig what you're saying, but they might be afraid to start, right? And ultimately, a journey starts by figuring a direction and beginning to put one foot in front of each other. And so I want to encourage anybody starting on that journey that it is a step-by-step process, and it doesn't have to be overwhelming. So while you go through the questions and identify some questions to ask, I'm going to take 5 minutes to walk you through some simple tips on storytelling, conversations, and engagement. So you guys can all see my screen. I see that. So one of my first points is just figure out where your constituency has conversations. And your constituency isn't just prospects and customers. It's their influencers as well, because I was able to build a global company of nearly $100 million in revenue on $5,000 investment with no marketing per se, by identifying the influencer of my core prospect and building relationships with them. Back in the day, it was Novell and then Microsoft resellers. And today at Nimble, it's the influencers in social sales and marketing that our customers connect with. And what I did was identified people that resonate with me, like Brian, and I began to share their content on my identity, both the corporate identity and my personal identity and the team members' identities. And I didn't just share content that was how you might become better, smarter, faster at social sales and marketing, but I share content that I'm passionate about outside of my business persona. So I might share content about how to fuel your brain with food, or what's going on with Ford dealerships and how they're dropping all their cars, or that the other day I was prospecting for new Nimble recruits at the Apple store, because I think that the best place to find new team members is places where they've already been trained on customer journey and they're looking to grow. And I then share content from other thought leaders like Bennett Kelly. And all of that generates interactions. And this is the key point. if you want to build relationships, you should be teaching other people to fish, how they can become better, smarter, faster. And if you teach people to fish, they'll figure out you sell fishing poles and they'll start interacting with you. And so things like Sherry Rose then start responding and interacting. And what you need to do is reel these conversations, reel these people in from the ocean and pull them into your boat and start a conversation with them. And if you're going to have a conversation, it's good to have context and insights on who they are and what they're about. That's what Nimble provides with our Chrome plugin, and the history of interactions that you and the team have had, and the ability to see what they've said about you, the team, and the brand, and the ability to walk in the digital footprint, which all gives you the ability to not only comment better in this stream, but also then to possibly follow up and follow through, because I think that's where we all fail as human beings. We don't follow up and follow through, and it's the basics that wins games. So I might want to follow up by sending her a note or communicating with her on some other channel. And so that's the process that started my relationship with Disney. So what happened was somebody at Salesforce started to say that CRM is about relationship management. And this person commented to that person and said, no, that's bullshit. It's about command and control. And when our sales manager is going to loosen their grip. And so I wanted to know who this person was. So I Nimbled them. And Nimble told me that this person manages data and CRM at Disney. And so not only did it give me that info on that record, but also his email and phone number. And because of the way he talked about me, I was able to comment in the stream and then reach out on an email that led to a LinkedIn conversation. And as that conversation shifted, I was able to shift Nimble with it. And I was able to take that online relationship, offline relationship to a face-to-face, because it turned out that not only did he live in my town, but his daughter goes to my school. So I invited him to breakfast that weekend, and I sat there and I asked 2 questions and I listened for 30 minutes. And if you want somebody to love you, just shut the F up and listen to them, because they will tell you everything you need to know about how you might be able to add value to that person. And that is your job in life, is to pay life forward by helping other people grow. And you can get anything you want in life by doing just that. And so that's just a simple glimpse of the power of building your brand and nurturing your network on an ongoing basis. And I believe that the reason we're on this planet is to grow our souls by helping other people grow theirs. That is your job. Service is the new sales. You should enter into every conversation and every relationship with not the intent to bag and tag them, but to find ways to add value. And in the end, that's all you'll leave this planet with, is the moments and the vibrations of those connections where you've been truly present with another human being, and the vibrations and the connections that you've paid forward over time. So that's just a little bit of preaching on the soapbox from Reverend Ferrara here. So Brian, what do you got for us as far as Q&A?
No, I love that. Yeah, some people were asking about different. I'm not familiar. One of the things I'm also very good at saying I don't know when I don't know something. Of a video service called OneMob. I'm not familiar with what OneMob is, but I think you're going to see lots of different services coming up, and I'm Googling what it is right now just so that I can. Seamless integration of video into our communications while tracking its metrics success with Salesforce. Oh, interesting. I mean, I think video. One of the things that's really interesting about video is that it's hard to track the success of video. Just kind of looking at video, just one-off video. But one of my favorite stats for video, if you're trying to figure out success with video, one of my favorite things on that is that I like to track repeat viewership. And so for those that are listening here, I like to say if I create a video, or I do a video every Monday, which is what I do. I do my live video every Monday. It's okay. It's cool that I have someone show up, one Monday here or there. But if I have someone that shows up back-to-back Mondays or 2 Mondays in a month, all of a sudden I look at that video and say, they're giving me that much of their time. That's a very mature lead. And so that's how I look at video platforms when I'm looking at video success and kind of tracking that. My favorite stat to study is repeat viewership, right? And that's what that really matters to me. Someone also asked, this was Ursa had said, what was the rest of the quote? So 75% millennials believe that attending a live event is more impactful for them than doing something online. So that was that quote. I don't know if there's other questions that you see, John or Michaela, that are coming in.
I'm answering a few in the background here.
There was a request for your 5 F's again, John.
Okay, so the 5 F's of life are family, friends, food, fun, and fellowship, or you could substitute frolicking in there for a fellowship. But either way, it's about the commonalities of life that build connections with people. In the old days, you got to know somebody by going in their office and looking at their walls, looking at the books they read, the degree of the school they went to, the knickknacks they collect. All those gave you clues into their background and personality that you then shared your own, which then built the intimacy and trust to get them to open up to you about their business issues, which as a professional, you can then solve. And I've got another 5. It's the 5 E's of building your brand and nurturing your network. And what you do is you educate, enchant, engage, embrace, and empower your customers. And it's basically a simple formula. Give your knowledge away. You've forgotten more about your products and services than your customers, prospects, and their influencers will ever know in their lifetime. And if you simply taught people how they could be great, they would see you as a trusted advisor, and they would not only pick up the phone and call you, but they drag their friends with them.
I love it. That is so true.
We have a really good question that just came in, and I don't see the name for some reason, but somebody is asking if you guys could give some examples of people that have mastered storytelling and that you personally enjoy following.
Ooh, it's a great question. So I have a couple that jump to mind just off the top of my mind. There's a fitness person. Her name is Brooke Ence, E-N-C-E. So Brooke Ence is her name. She does a vlog. I follow her on Instagram, but she is she works with a lot of brands. She's a bodybuilding pro athlete, but she does an amazing job of humanizing her story and sharing all these different things. And I can tell you, I ended up following her on Instagram for the last 3 months, and she released a new clothing line, but I'm not a fitness person. And she released a new shoe. She teamed up with a company to release a new shoe line. Well, I just bought her shoe 2 days ago. And I've watched her vlog numerous times. And so she's one that's like, for me, I like to look at people that are a little bit outside of my marketing ecosystem. So she's one that comes to mind. There's another one, a celebrity that's doing it really well. I mean, Will Smith is a great one. Another one is Candice Bjur from Full House fame. Or if you have kids, my kids love Fuller House, which is the new version. But Candice was DJ on Full House, and she just released her book. But she does an amazing job of giving, when I talk about access, like she gives people access to, what her backstage room looks like. She gives you access to her kitchen. She gives you even access to talks that she has with her kids. She's cried on her Instagram. She was overwhelmed because she missed a date for her publisher. And so these are things where, I look at a celebrity as someone that's disconnected from me. They can't relate with me. They're very much like a brand, right? They're not human oftentimes. But when you have people like, Candice, who does that really well, she's one that does it really well. A company, if you want to look at a company, we are Cisco, the enterprise technology company. They have a brand called We Are Cisco that is run by Carmen, and they're on Instagram, they're on Twitter, they're on Facebook, and they do an amazing job. They allow employees to take over their accounts. They're to me one of my favorite brands out there. And I see, John, you have one that I agree with this one. So John, I'll let you say the one that you're pulling up.
So I first met Vala Ashvar, not indifferent than when I first met you, Brian. He was working for a technology company on the East Coast as part of their customer success team. And our relationship developed over time where he began to use social to build his brand. And that then built the company brand to the point where the company got bought. And in the transaction, he then was hired by Salesforce to become their chief digital evangelist. And all Vala does on a daily basis is inspire and educate other people about how they can grow their soul, period. He doesn't talk about Salesforce. He doesn't talk about business per se. And if you want to know about a storyteller, somebody who has mastered the art of social, just follow Vala and just read the stuff that he shares. And I love his humanity. I love his soul. I love his heart. And he's not like a flamboyant, he's just like a regular guy that has transformed himself, and he's transforming others.
And he's great. He's one that I've been lucky enough to build a friendship with as well. Very much like you said, that it just does an amazing job of sharing the story and telling and allowing people into his world and doing it in such a helpful way.
And one more person I'd just like to share, somebody who's a storyteller that I absolutely love and respect. He's passed away. His name's George Carlin. And if you want to get a glimpse of his storytelling, just Google George Carlin and education, and read what he talks about education and why education sucks in the United States. And I just think that he's a powerful storyteller that jabs you a little bit and really talks about change. And I think that change is still evolving in our country, that we are still evolving as human beings, that there are people that are not really recognized in the way that they should be, including the women around us. And I just think that we need to continually evolve as human beings to create opportunity for everyone, not just in the United States, but the world.
I agree completely. And I think that's the exciting part about, and I think maybe how I can wrap up my section of this is that, I do believe that everyone has a story to tell. And figuring out what your story is, one of my favorite secrets to that is, ask your best friend and your worst enemy, or not your worst enemy, because you probably aren't talking to your worst enemy, but someone that doesn't know you maybe as much, and ask them just what they think about who you are or what you're about, and then kind of start sharing that from that direction. But I think the world we're living in today, it doesn't matter, where you're at in your life or your business. We have the ability, unlike the times before. I think in previous times, you need to know the right people. You need to live in the Silicon Valley. You need to have all the right connections. But I think if you can humanize yourself, you can be yourself, and you can allow people in to understand who you are. It's a powerful world that we're living in, and that's and you're also showing one of my favorite tools on screen right now, BuzzSumo. That's another great tool with another great leader that Steve and the team over there.
So I'm showing this, Brian, because there's a final question from Villa Lucas. That's a common question that I hear from so many people, that as a small business owner, there's so many things to do. My challenge is how much to prioritize the online presence over essential tasks. Any recommendations on good formulas or ratio, or for how much time to spend on creating content and doing social media presence? And I want to close with a story. So I sold Goldmine when I was 40 years old. This is me basically in and around that time. And I retired for 10 years, and I spent 10 years raising kids. And I feel so blessed to have been able to be a present father and husband and member of my community. That's hard to do as an entrepreneur. But imagine after I got my kids into school and I started to use social, and I saw I was going to change the way we work and play. And I started to look for tools to manage those conversations. And I envisioned building a tool to empower other people to grow and build Nimble. How do I take that out of my garage, which it literally started in, and build a brand, not just for myself, but the company, and to scale that globally? And so, Sarah, the way that I did that is I went out and identified the key influencer of my core prospects, and I began to share their content, because ultimately you don't have time to write content. And so what you could do is just go out and find content. And this is a topic I just picked because of Jack Ward, the doctor who does integrated health, that you could find content and you can find influencers, and you begin to share that content on a daily basis using tools like Buffer to then share that content across your company identity and its team's identities, and your team's identities. And then you're able to then share this content, and that's like fishing lures that get dropped in the river. And you could do that while you're having coffee in the morning. And then you pick times of the day to then listen to notifications and do some interaction. And you could do all of that in literally maybe an hour total for the day to get started. And if you want, you can hire people to do that. There are people that do this for a living. help small businesses set up brands, share content, and actually engage for you. And it doesn't cost that much money. So there's a lot of formulas to that. So I hope that that helps. Brian, do you have any closing thoughts on that?
No, I for me, part of it is you just figure out a process. I'm a big believer in tools and automation, but tools and automation are great for sharing content. You shouldn't automate your engagement. So I'm a big believer in leveraging these tools so that you spend more time engaging. So when someone asks me how much time should they spend creating content and doing social, I would say, like you said, curate content, share others' content by adding your own flavor and your own mix in there. But then also on top of that, like, don't be afraid to share others' content with the idea that when someone engages with you, you're gonna then spend time having conversations, because just sharing content and not spending the time to engage ends up being a waste of time for everybody on all sides. So there isn't an exact time. I will say for myself individually, I curate my content using a tool called Flipboard. And then I add it to my buffer. So I use the tool Buffer. I'm moving to a new tool called Agoro Pulse, but I'm not using it enough yet to truly advocate for it. But every Monday for about 30 minutes, I flip through my Flipboard that I find content that'll be relative for my audience, and I add it to my scheduler, and then it schedules the content out over the entire week. So you'll see there's 167,000 tweets that have been sent out on my account. And so the pride for me is I schedule a lot of my content that shares out links, but I can tell you that every single reply, every single tweet that has been an engagement tweet out of that account has been me. I've never outsourced or had anyone else not do that. I was even doing it during the webinar. I was replying back to a couple of the people that were sharing it out there during the show. And so for me, that's my advice, is try to find that happy medium. Don't be afraid to outsource some of your content creation or your content sharing with the idea that you would spend more time sharing your story. And I guess I'll leave you with this, is I think social can get overwhelming, but when you're able to be yourself, when you're able to figure out where the tools fit in there, the overwhelming turns into powerful, the powerful turns into relationships. And I think, John, you and I are a perfect example of, a conversation started on Twitter that became a friendship that allows us to collaborate and do things like this. Even though you're in Santa Monica and I'm in Virginia, thanks to the world that we're living in, we're able to, share our stories and connect with people. So thanks again for having me on. And hopefully if people have questions, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter or any of the channels. Every channel that's out there, I think consistency is extremely important. So I am iSocialFans with a Z or a Z at the end. And reach out to me on any channel, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Feel free to connect with me there, and I'll be happy to answer any questions people have.
Awesome. Brian, thank you so much. It's always great to connect. And thank you so much for getting up on the soapbox to inspire and educate our audience, our shared audience today. Thank you, everyone who has attended, especially since we are now 8 minutes past the hour. Please reach out to Brian and myself. Let us know how we can help you grow. That's why we are here. That's why we do what we do. And have an amazing Thursday. Good luck and good selling. Ciao.